What made The Boys so successful? Because it has everything that no other show has. The Boys is an exciting canon that begins with Garth Ennis and Derek Robertson's comic book series. Later, it was turned into a highly acclaimed Amazon Prime Video show. Currently, with a massive fan following and being one of the most streamed shows, here's what made The Boys so successful. Take a look. Although both Marvel and DC are having trouble with their new movies and TV shows, Prime Video's The Boys has stood out as a bold alternative for 3 seasons. Even though The Boys comics came out in 2006, it was the Amazon show that really caught people's attention, which started back in 2019. From there onwards, the second season came out quickly after, and now that The Boys have offered another promising season, fans are simply all over the place. Nielsen numbers also show that people watched 10.6 billion minutes of The Boys in 2022, making it the 11th most watched original streaming show of the year. It proved to be more popular than any new Marvel show that year. So what's so great about The Boys? For one big reason, it turns the superhero genre on its head. Some people might start watching thinking it will be a normal fantasy show for the whole family. Instead, they see a show that is rated TVMA and is anything but innocent. And again, The Boys is based on the comic book series by Garth Ennis and Derek Robertson. So each episode starts with a clear warning, and there's a good reason for it. Obviously, there is so much crazy mayhem, bad language, and shockingly evil scenes on this show that it makes Deadpool and horrible bosses look mild in comparison. And even though it's very violent and quite the bad mouth, it never feels over the top or exploitative. Then again, the writing is another thing that stands out. Some of the best and most interesting writing in streaming right now can be found in The Boys. And so, when put up against big TV shows like Breaking Bad and Game of Thrones, it holds its own. You see, Eric Kripke created and runs the show, and his writing team has created interesting characters and storylines that pull viewers into a new but familiar world every single time. They've even brought new life to superhero and comic book stories through smart humor, dark comedy, and deep themes. And of course, that's still not the only thing the show has to give. Not to mention, the group of cruel supes and mostly likable non-supes is what really makes The Boys soar. Even though the writers worked hard to make these characters, it's the great acting that brings them to life and makes us love them, flaws and all. The supes are also quite brilliant spoofs of our favorite Marvel and DC heroes. They feel both familiar and new at the same time, because when characters aren't given enough depth in other stories, they give these characters a lot of depth, making The Boys shine like no other. Naturally, the show is great at making each character feel like they are their own person. These satirical superheroes are more developed and well done than their comic book, movie, or TV versions in a lot of ways. So it doesn't matter if the characters have abilities or not, they feel very real. Of course, it's not easy to do this since the story is about people trying to defeat strong supes, but at the very least, the show has a lot of things that Marvel doesn't. For one, Seth Rogen is no stranger to R-rated movies based on comic books. He and Evan Goldberg also created and directed the AMC show Preacher, which was based on another Garth Ennis comic and was known for being bloody and silly. So basically, Rogen has seen directly what mainstream superhero media does that is outside the norm. At the same time, one of the best things about The Boys is that it is obviously over the top. There are a lot of clean superhero stories out there, but Rogen's show stands out because it breaks all the rules. He's right, Marvel would never make The Boys, and honestly, that's probably for the best, given the show's shady themes and the artistic freedom it has, and if nothing else, Rogen says that The Boys hits home because it's so different from the usual Marvel routine. It was nice to read the first issue of The Boys comic, which was written by Garth Ennis and had drawings by Derek Robertson. Currently, The Boys has a reputation for being one of the goriest shows on TV after 3 seasons, and who doesn't like themselves some sick visuals? And because a show wouldn't be the same without its cast, and The Boys actors take it to a whole new level. Not only does Anthony Starr do a great job as the villain Homelander, but there are other great performances as well. For instance, Karl Urban gives Billy Butcher charm and depth, which makes a character who might not be likable very interesting. At the same time, Karen Fukuhara shows off her acting skills as the intense Kimiko, and Jack Quaid does a great job as Huey Campbell, whose complicated change is one of the best parts of the show. Everyone is also perfectly casted, from the boys to the Seven and the different people who work at Vought Industries. Point being, there isn't a weak link in the group. Not to forget, there are satirical comments and references all over The Boys that make it so much more interesting and funny in a way that you won't find anywhere else. One positive thing about the show is that it was made by Amazon's Prime Video, so the parody still works, and they make fun of their parent company in some clever ways. You'll love it. But it's not over yet. People don't like or talk about this aspect of the show enough, but it's a lot of fun making fun of its sex scenes. For years, pop culture has made female nudity and needless sex look cool. Agreed? Naturally, The Boys flips this idea on its head in a way that only The Boys can do and get away with. Similarly, the show doesn't hold back with these scenes, and there are a lot of funny tongue-in-cheek and awkward sex scenes. And don't get us wrong, the show isn't kink-shaming or against sex in any way. Instead, The Boys give these scenes a new look by showing them in a way and not making them feel crude. The Boys' lack of naked women and large number of naked men make the show feel like a new take on a problem that has been plaguing pop culture for years. Obviously, it's not working to change your interests, so don't you worry. And if you still don't know what makes The Boys so great and popular, here's something else that might get you going. Of course, one big problem with movies based on superhero comics is that the stories often become too easy to guess. These plots are easy to guess because they use familiar tropes and the original stories have already been written. And as long as the show or movie stays mostly true to the comic, the main story is clear to everyone. For instance, Marvel Comics fans weren't surprised when the mighty Thor made her debut in the MCU, and they weren't shocked when she was diagnosed with cancer. In the same way, the only real secret about Batman and Robin is that Robin is with them. Ultimately, this trend is broken up by The Boys, which is nice. It's based on a comic, but not the most well-known one. There are big differences between the show and the books, which is a big part of its appeal. The story is really hard to guess as well, and not just because Homelander could do some shocking things. It's not afraid to go its own way, and The Boys takes the superhero genre in new directions. Currently, the series is still a mystery to people who have read the comics because it has changed and, in many ways, gotten better since the comics. Fans are kept on their toes by the uncertainty, which turns each show into a new adventure. So, even more so in a field where surprises are becoming less common, it's fun to watch a show that can surprise you. At least nowadays. The change from the comic book also gives the writers room to try out new ideas and character lines. For them, it means they can write about modern problems and build characters in ways that feel new and current. For example, the books give the show's characters a base, but they have become their own people. At the end of the day, The Boys stands out because it's different and has a story that feels both new and old. It shows that there is room for new ideas and surprises, even in a field that has been done a lot. That's also what keeps people coming back season after season, looking forward to what comes next. Have you ever thought that The Boys would be just as interesting without the superhero stuff? Really, it's a great look at how powerful people can get wild when they're rich and popular. Secondly, we all look up to celebrities and think they're great, but let's be honest, they can be really bad, right? The Seven in The Boys look like perfect people on screen, but behind the scenes, they're into drugs, abuse, and even murder. And even though many celebrities don't really have abilities, they act like they can't be hurt. But once the public sees what's going on behind the scenes, their untouchable position falls apart. Essentially, this show was created by Eric Kripke, who made Supernatural, a mix of dark fantasy and comedy. And don't forget Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg, who made Preacher, another great black comedy based on a comic book. Some of their most famous movies can be heard in The Boys. Do you remember Pineapple Express? Just like The Boys, it's about a group of misfits who often avoid death while making strong friends. Is this the end? It has the same feel as public people who are careless and only care about themselves. On top of that, the show is full of their trademark shock humor that comes out of nowhere. That's why The Boys is such a hit. Who doesn't like twisted humor mixed with a juicy attack on star culture? Cutting it short, we can't talk about The Boys without talking about Homelander, the show's truly scary bad guy. This evil take on Superman is one of the best bad guys in all of media, not just TV. The main thing that makes the show what it is Homelander. Not to mention, Homelander's character is crazy complicated. People love him, but he's also an emotional mess, especially in Season 3. His volatility is what scares people so much about him. As the world's most powerful soup, he also has raw, unbreakable power that makes every other soup his servant and keeps the Seven constantly afraid. Homelander knows exactly who he is, and the show has shown him doing a lot of horrible, cruel things. Really, watching Homelander is like being in a car accident. You can't take your eyes off of it, and you're always waiting for him to do something shocking next. Anthony Starr's acting is so scary good that you can't help but be scared and interested in him. So make sure to keep an eye out for him when you do start watching it. Now, we are not sure if you haven't already watched it, but companies like Vought can keep making big movies because there are so many heroes that people want to buy. Sense a pattern? It's clear that the people who make the show love superheroes, but it also makes a smart point of criticizing how they've taken over everything. Vought even looks a lot like some real-life companies that are known for having a lot of power. Heroes should hang up their capes for good, says one, but fans can't get enough of them. So no matter where you stand, The Boys is the best comic show out there because it stands out from the rest. Are you a fan? Make sure to drop by with your thoughts in the comments below. If you haven't already watched it, this is probably the best sign for you to start it right away. Don't forget to subscribe. See you next time.